Sophia was a young woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She worked as a waitress in one of the city's most luxurious restaurants. Every morning before her shift, she tied her hair neatly, put on her simple uniform, and looked at herself in the mirror. She didn't wear expensive clothes or jewelry, yet there was something graceful about her. She carried herself with quiet confidence, the kind that comes from inner peace, not wealth. Her co-workers liked her because she was polite, hardworking, and never complained, even on the busiest nights when everyone else felt tired or frustrated. People often assumed Sophia was poor just because she worked as a waitress. They didn't know her secret. She was actually married to Ethan Reynolds, a billionaire businessman known for his intelligence, generosity, and calm personality. Ethan owned several companies across the country, but unlike most wealthy men, he hated showing off. He preferred a quiet, private life. Both he and Sophia believed that love meant understanding and respect, not money or fame. When Sophia married Ethan, she promised she would never let his wealth change who she was. She didn't want to live behind gates or in fancy parties where everyone pretended to be perfect. Instead, she wanted to do something meaningful. She decided to keep working at the restaurant where she first met Ethan years ago. She told him, "I feel alive here. I get to meet real people, see how they treat others, and remind myself where I came from." Ethan smiled and supported her completely. He admired her strength and simplicity. Every day, Sophia served people from all kinds of backgrounds. Some were kind and humble, others were rude and entitled, but she never let anyone's attitude affect her kindness. When someone spoke harshly, she would simply smile and continue doing her job. Her coworkers sometimes asked her why she didn't get angry or talk back. Sophia would laugh softly and say, "Maybe they're just having a bad day." Sometimes kindness is the best answer. Her life might have looked simple from the outside, but Sophia had faced many struggles before she met Ethan. She grew up in a small town where her parents owned a bakery. Money was always tight, and Sophia learned the value of hard work early in life. When her parents passed away, she moved to the city to find a job. She worked multiple shifts, saved every penny, and never gave up. Those years of struggle shaped her into the calm, patient woman she was now. At the restaurant, the customers often overlooked her. They saw only a waitress, not realizing the strength, intelligence, and grace behind her smile. But Sophia didn't mind. She preferred to stay unnoticed. It allowed her to see people's true colors. She observed how the rich treated those who served them, how some customers acted differently when they thought no one important was watching. Sometimes, she would quietly wonder how people would behave if they knew she was a billionaire's wife. But she never revealed it. She wanted honesty, not fake respect. Sophia's favorite time of day was right before closing. When the restaurant grew quiet, she would sit by the window for a few minutes, looking at the city lights, thinking about how far she had come. She often remembered her first date with Ethan. He had met her right there in the restaurant, dressed in a simple shirt, not mentioning who he really was. They talked about life, dreams, and values, not about money or success. When he later revealed he was a billionaire, Sophia was shocked. But what mattered to her wasn't his fortune. It was his heart. The restaurant staff didn't know about her true identity. Only the manager, Mr. Clark, did. He had promised to keep it a secret. He admired Sophia deeply and often said, "You're proof that kindness doesn't need a title." Sophia would just smile and continue her work. She was also loved by the customers who came regularly. An old couple always asked to be seated in her section, saying her presence made their evenings brighter. Children liked her because she talked to them kindly, and even the strictest business clients appreciated her patience. Sophia had a special way of making everyone feel seen and respected. However, not everyone valued her kindness. The restaurant often hosted big events for the city's elite. Powerful businessmen, wealthy families, and glamorous celebrities. Some treated Sophia well, others treated her like she was invisible. She had learned to expect that kind of behavior, but she never let it change her attitude. She always believed that how you treat others when no one's watching says the most about who you really are. One Friday night, the manager told the staff to prepare for an exclusive private dinner. It was for an influential CEO named Daniel Crawford, who was celebrating a new business deal. Sophia recognized the name because Ethan had mentioned him once in passing. Daniel was young, rich, and arrogant. He had a reputation for being rude to waiters, but Sophia didn't care. For her, every guest deserved the same respect. That night, as she arranged the tables and polished the glasses. Sophia felt a strange sense of calm. She didn't know that this dinner would change everything, that a single act of cruelty would reveal the truth she had been quietly hiding, and that her calmness would soon test the hearts of those around her. She glanced at the clock, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and smiled softly to herself. "Another night, another story?" she whispered, unaware that this story would become the one people would never forget, the one that would teach everyone in that restaurant, and beyond, what true class really meant. Sophia walked to the entrance, ready to welcome the guests, completely unaware that soon her simple waitress life was about to collide with the arrogance of the wealthy in the most unexpected and unforgettable way. The restaurant looked brighter than usual that evening. Soft golden lights reflected off the polished glasses and silver cutlery. The air was filled with the warm smell of roasted meat, butter, and coffee. It wasn't just another night. Tonight, the restaurant was hosting a private dinner for one of the city's most talked about businessmen, Daniel Crawford, the young CEO of a booming tech company. He had a reputation for being brilliant but arrogant. People said he was charming when he wanted to be, but cruel when things didn't go his way. Sophia was busy preparing the tables with quiet focus. She adjusted each napkin perfectly, checked every plate, and made sure the candles burned evenly. She didn't care who the guests were. She treated everyone the same, but she could already sense the tension among the staff. Her co-workers whispered to each other nervously. They knew Daniel Crawford was not an easy man to please. He had shouted at waiters before in other restaurants. Some even said he once made a chef cry. When Daniel finally arrived, the atmosphere shifted. He walked in wearing an expensive black suit, his hair perfectly styled, and confidence radiating from him like a shield. Beside him was Vanessa, his glamorous girlfriend. She was tall, with long dark hair, perfect makeup, and a diamond bracelet that sparkled under the lights. Vanessa wasn't shy about attention. In fact, she demanded it. As soon as she entered, her eyes moved around the room as if she owned it. Vanessa's heels clicked sharply on the marble floor as she walked. She didn't greet anyone, didn't smile, and barely looked at the staff. She sat down and immediately started giving orders. "I want the best table by the window," she said, without even checking if it was already reserved for someone else. The manager quickly nodded and moved people around just to please her. Daniel laughed softly and said, "You heard her, she gets what she wants." His tone made it sound like a joke, but everyone knew he was serious. Sophia approached their table with her usual calm and politeness. "Good evening, sir, ma'am. Welcome to La Maison. My name is Sophia and I'll be serving you tonight," she said kindly. Vanessa barely looked up. She glanced at Sophia's uniform and gave a small smirk. "Fine. Just make sure the food's hot this time," she said coldly. Sophia smiled and nodded, pretending not to notice the insult. She was used to this kind of behavior from entitled guests. As she poured water into their glasses, Daniel complimented Sophia. "You've got great service here," he said, looking at her with a smile. "Most places mess up even simple things these days." Sophia thanked him politely, but Vanessa's expression changed immediately. Her smile disappeared. She looked at Sophia from head to toe and said under her breath, "Of course you'd notice her." Her tone was sharp, but Daniel ignored her, busy checking his phone. Throughout the evening, Vanessa continued to act like the queen of the world. She complained about the temperature of the soup, even though it was perfectly fine. She sent the waiter back twice because she didn't like how her wine was poured, and every time Sophia came to the table, Vanessa made small, cutting remarks. "Do you even know what caviar is?" she asked once, laughing. "You look like someone who's never tasted anything expensive." Sophia kept her composure. She smiled and said softly, "Not everything valuable comes with a price tag, ma'am." That simple reply made Vanessa's smile freeze for a moment. Daniel was mostly quiet, busy with his business associates who joined them later, but Vanessa kept showing off. She laughed too loudly, waved her hands while talking, and made sure everyone around noticed her. She liked being seen, she liked feeling powerful. Sophia could see right through her. She had met many people like Vanessa, people who needed to belittle others to feel important. Sophia didn't judge her, but she felt a little sad. She thought, some people mistake cruelty for confidence. The restaurant staff tried their best to stay out of Vanessa's way. The young waiter, Liam, accidentally spilled a few drops of water near her purse, and Vanessa exploded. "Are you blind?" Do you know how much this bag costs? She yelled. The restaurant went silent for a moment. The manager rushed over to apologize, and Vanessa rolled her eyes dramatically. Unbelievable. Do you even hire trained people here? She said. Sophia stepped forward calmly and took over the table, helping Liam and assuring Vanessa. It's okay, ma'am. I'll make sure everything is perfect from now on. Vanessa leaned back and crossed her arms. You better? She said sharply. Sophia nodded and continued working with the same gentle smile. Inside, she reminded herself to stay patient. She had seen anger and arrogance before, but she knew that kindness was stronger. Still, she could feel Vanessa's jealousy growing, especially when Daniel's attention occasionally drifted towards Sophia's calmness and professionalism. At one point, Daniel said, You should learn from her, Vanessa. Look how she handles pressure. Vanessa froze for a second, pretending to laugh, but her eyes were cold. She felt insulted. No one had ever compared her to a waitress before. She turned to Sophia and gave her a fake smile. Well, she's paid to act polite. I guess that's the difference. Sophia simply replied, I like my job, ma'am. It teaches me a lot about people. Her words were innocent, but they hit deep. Vanessa's smile disappeared completely after that. As the evening went on, Vanessa drank more champagne. Her voice grew louder, her patience thinner, and her temper more dangerous. Sophia sensed trouble coming, but she didn't know how bad it would get. The manager noticed too, quietly signaling Sophia to stay calm and avoid confrontation. She nodded, trusting her instinct that something was about to happen. When the dessert was served, Vanessa accidentally spilled some chocolate sauce on her designer dress. She looked furious and turned towards Sophia, even though Sophia had nothing to do with it. You stupid girl, she hissed. You should have watched what you were doing. Everyone turned to look. Sophia was speechless for a moment but managed to whisper, I'm sorry, ma'am, but I didn't. Before she could finish, Vanessa stood up suddenly, her eyes full of anger and jealousy, and reached out toward Sophia's apron. That one reckless act would soon change everything. But at that moment, Sophia only felt confusion and sadness, not knowing that the humiliation she was about to face would reveal a truth that would shock everyone in the room. The calm, polite waitress they all looked down upon wasn't who they thought she was, and Vanessa was about to learn that lesson in the most unforgettable way. Vanessa sat at the table with her arms crossed, pretending to enjoy the evening, but deep down, she was burning with jealousy. She couldn't stop thinking about how Daniel had complimented the waitress, Sophia, earlier. It was supposed to be her night. A night where everyone admired her beauty, her dress, and her presence beside a powerful CEO. But instead, Daniel's kind words toward a simple waitress made her feel invisible. She kept glancing at Sophia as if every move the young woman made was an insult to her pride. Sophia, on the other hand, was just doing her job with quiet focus. She walked gracefully between the tables, checking on guests, carrying trays and refilling glasses. Her smile was calm and sincere. She didn't know Vanessa's thoughts. She just wanted everyone to have a pleasant dining experience. When she passed by Daniel's table again, she gently asked, Would you like me to bring more champagne, sir? Daniel smiled politely and nodded. Yes. Thank you, Sophia. You're doing great. That one sentence made Vanessa's blood boil. She forced a smile but clenched her jaw tightly. Doing great? She repeated under her breath. She's just a waitress? She whispered angrily to herself. Daniel didn't notice, but the few people sitting nearby could sense her irritation. Vanessa leaned back in her chair and whispered to her friend sitting next to her. Look at her. She thinks she's so special just because she can carry a tray properly. Her friend tried to calm her down, saying, Vanessa, don't make a scene. It's not worth it. But Vanessa wasn't listening. Sophia came back a few minutes later with a fresh bottle of champagne. She carefully opened it, poured it into their glasses and smiled. Would you like anything else, ma'am? She asked politely. Vanessa looked at her for a moment, her lips curling into a fake smile. No, that'll be all, she said sharply, then added in a louder voice. Oh wait, maybe you can tell me something. Sophia looked a little confused but replied kindly, Of course, ma'am. Vanessa leaned forward and said, sarcastically, Do you always smile like that? Or is it part of your job training? The people at the nearby tables looked uncomfortable. Sophia paused for a second but kept her calm. It's part of who I am, ma'am, she said softly. I believe kindness makes the world a little easier. Vanessa gave a cold laugh. How sweet. Maybe you should write a book about it. Life lessons from a waitress? She said mockingly. Daniel looked up from his phone, frowning slightly. Vanessa, stop it, he said quietly, but she brushed him off. I'm just joking, babe, she said though. Everyone knew it wasn't a joke. Sophia walked away without saying another word. Her heart a little heavy but her face still calm. She had learned not to take rude comments personally, but sometimes the cruelty still stung. She went to the back of the restaurant, took a deep breath, and told herself to stay strong. She had faced worse things in life than mean words, and she knew losing her temper wouldn't help anyone. After a few moments, she straightened her uniform and returned to the dining area, ready to finish her shift, peacefully. However, Vanessa wasn't done. The jealousy inside her was growing like fire. She couldn't stand how Sophia carried herself with such quiet confidence. Even without fancy clothes or jewelry, Sophia had something Vanessa lacked, grace. And that made Vanessa feel small. She whispered to Daniel, "Why do you keep talking to her? It's embarrassing." Daniel sighed. "She's just doing her job, Vanessa. Stop overreacting." His calm tone only made her angrier. She grabbed her wine glass and took a long sip, her eyes following Sophia every time she moved around the room. When Sophia brought their dessert, she placed the plates carefully in front of them. Daniel thanked her again, and that simple word, thanks, made Vanessa's patience finally snap. She muttered loudly enough for Sophia to hear. "Of course he likes you. You're probably used to charming men for tips." The words hit Sophia like a slap, but she still refused to respond harshly. She looked at Vanessa with gentle eyes and said quietly, "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable, ma'am. That wasn't my intention." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Please, don't act innocent," she said. "I've seen women like you before, pretending to be polite while flirting for attention." The nearby tables fell silent. Everyone could feel the tension. Daniel looked embarrassed and said, "Vanessa, enough." But Vanessa ignored him. "No, I'm serious. Women like her ruin relationships," she said loudly. Sophia simply bowed her head and whispered, "I understand, ma'am," before turning to walk away. As she left, one of her co-workers whispered, "Don't take it personally. She's just jealous." Sophia smiled faintly and replied, "Some people fight battles we can't see." She continued serving other tables, pretending everything was fine, but Vanessa's cruel words stayed in her mind. A little later, Vanessa noticed Daniel glancing at Sophia again when she passed by to clear another table. It wasn't romantic. It was admiration for her patience and professionalism. But Vanessa's mind twisted it into jealousy. She leaned closer to Daniel and hissed, "You really like her, don't you?" Daniel frowned. "What are you talking about?" She didn't answer. She just stared at Sophia's back with cold eyes, her anger now mixed with envy and humiliation. As the evening went on, Vanessa drank more, her words became sharper, and her smile turned fake. Sophia could sense that something bad was about to happen. She felt that Vanessa's anger wasn't just about her. It was about something deeper, maybe insecurity, maybe pride, but whatever it was dangerous. Still, Sophia kept doing her job with calm dignity, never raising her voice, never showing her hurt. When the restaurant staff began cleaning up after the main course, Sophia returned to Daniel and Vanessa's table one last time to check if everything was okay. "Did you enjoy your meal?" she asked politely. Daniel nodded, but Vanessa didn't respond. She just stared at Sophia, her face cold, her hands gripping her napkin tightly. "Enjoy?" she finally said. "No, I didn't enjoy it, not with you walking around pretending to be better than everyone." Her voice was full of venom. Daniel looked shocked. "Vanessa," he said sharply, but she didn't stop. "You think you're special, don't you? Just because you smile and act all perfect." Sophia stayed still, her eyes calm but sad. "I don't think I'm special, ma'am," she said quietly. "I just believe in treating people kindly." That simple answer made Vanessa furious. She slammed her napkin on the table. "Kindly? Don't act so fake," she shouted, her voice echoing through the restaurant. Everyone turned to look. Sophia froze, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. In that tense moment, nobody realized that this heated exchange was just the beginning. Vanessa's jealousy was about to turn into humiliation for herself, because the truth about the quiet waitress she was insulting was far greater than anything she could ever imagine. And soon, that truth would leave the entire restaurant, including Vanessa. Speechless, the night had grown tense, and everyone in the restaurant could feel it. Laughter and conversation had faded into awkward silence around Daniel and Vanessa's table. Sophia continued to move calmly, but she could sense that trouble was coming. Vanessa's anger had turned from quiet jealousy into open hostility. Her voice was sharp, her eyes filled with irritation, and every small thing seemed to annoy her. The way Sophia smiled, the way she spoke politely, even the way Daniel seemed relaxed. Whenever Sophia was nearby, all of it burned inside Vanessa's pride. Sophia was trying her best to keep things professional. She didn't want to ruin the atmosphere for other guests. She walked carefully, balancing plates and glasses as if nothing was wrong. But in her heart, she felt uneasy. She had dealt with rude customers before. But something about Vanessa's behavior was different. There was a kind of cruel pleasure in her tone, a need to embarrass someone just to feel powerful. Still, Sophia told herself to stay calm. She repeated in her mind, "Don't let anger win, kindness is strength." Vanessa, however, was losing control. She had drunk several glasses of champagne and her jealousy had turned into blind rage. Daniel noticed her mood but didn't say much, thinking it was just her usual drama. But what he didn't realize was that Vanessa had reached a breaking point. She didn't want to look weak in front of his business partners, so she decided to do something that would make her feel powerful again, even if it meant hurting someone innocent. When Sophia walked by their table again to refill the glasses, Vanessa suddenly leaned back in her chair and said loudly, "You again? Are you following us or something?" Sophia looked surprised but still answered politely, "No, ma'am. I'm just making sure everything is fine with your service." Her calm voice made Vanessa even angrier. "Fine? Do I look fine to you?" she snapped. Everyone nearby turned their heads, trying not to stare but too curious to look away. Sophia stood still, her hands gently holding the tray. "I'm sorry if I upset you, ma'am," she said softly. "That wasn't my intention." Vanessa smirked and said, "Oh, stop pretending to be sweet. You're probably used to flirting with rich men for extra tips." The word stung like a slap. Daniel frowned. "Vanessa, enough." But she ignored him completely. "I mean, look at her." "Daniel," Vanessa said loudly, pointing at Sophia. "She acts so innocent, but I can see what she's doing." Sophia's eyes widened slightly, but she stayed silent. She didn't want to argue. She just wanted to leave quietly. As Sophia tried to turn away, Vanessa grabbed her wrist. "I'm talking to you," she said angrily, her grip tight and painful. Sophia froze for a moment but didn't pull away. She calmly said, "Please let go, ma'am. I don't want to disturb your evening." Daniel stood up. "Vanessa, stop it now." But Vanessa didn't listen. In that heated second, blinded by her pride and jealousy, she reached out and grabbed the front of Sophia's uniform dress. And with one quick motion, she tore it. The sound of ripping fabric filled the air. The entire restaurant fell silent. Forks froze midair. The music stopped, and everyone stared in shock. Sophia stood still, her torn dress hanging awkwardly, revealing the white undershirt beneath her uniform. Her face turned red with embarrassment. She could feel everyone's eyes on her, but she didn't scream or cry. Instead, she stood tall, trying to hold her dignity together. Her heart pounded, but her voice, when it came, was steady and calm. Vanessa looked around proudly, thinking people would laugh with her. But no one did, not even Daniel. He looked horrified. "Vanessa, what's wrong with you?" he shouted. She tried to laugh it off. "Oh, come on. She deserved it," she said. She was asking for it with that fake little smile. But no one laughed. The manager rushed over immediately, his face pale. Ma'am, please calm down. That's unacceptable behavior," he said, trying to cover Sophia with his jacket. Sophia gently stopped him, shaking her head. "It's okay, Mr. Clark," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly but still kind. She looked at Vanessa and said quietly, "It's okay, ma'am. I forgive you." Her words shocked everyone. How could she forgive someone who had just humiliated her in front of a room full of people? Vanessa blinked, confused. "What did you say?" she asked. Sophia repeated. I said, it's okay. Some things can be mended, others can't, but that's not your fault. She smiled weakly and turned to walk away, holding the torn part of her dress together. The guests whispered among themselves, shocked and embarrassed by what they had just seen. Some glared at Vanessa. Others shook their heads. One woman muttered, that poor girl, while another whispered, how cruel. Daniel looked furious. Vanessa, that was disgusting. He said, you just embarrassed yourself, not her. Vanessa looked around and realized that instead of admiration, she was getting disgusted looks. Her face turned pale. She stammered, I didn't mean to. It was just a joke. But no one believed her. Sophia quietly disappeared into the staff area, her hands trembling as she tried to breathe. She went into the back room, sat on a small stool, and finally allowed herself to cry softly. Her co-worker Lily ran to her and hugged her. Sophia, are you okay? She asked. Sophia nodded, wiping her tears. I'm fine, just shocked. She whispered. She didn't want to make a scene. She didn't even want revenge. She just wanted peace. Meanwhile, in the main dining area, Daniel and the manager were trying to control the situation. Vanessa was still talking loudly, trying to justify what she did. She was being disrespectful, she said, but Daniel cut her off. No, Vanessa, you were disrespectful, to her and to everyone here. His voice was cold and final. Vanessa opened her mouth to reply, but before she could, the restaurant doors opened, and a tall man in a black suit walked in holding a bouquet of flowers. His presence instantly drew attention. Sophia didn't know it yet, but that man was her husband, Ethan Reynolds, the billionaire she had been married to for 3 years. He had come to surprise her after her shift, but instead, he had arrived at the very moment her dignity had been torn apart by Vanessa's cruelty. The night that began as a dinner for the rich was about to turn into a lesson the arrogant would never forget, because the woman they had humiliated wasn't just a waitress. She was the wife of one of the most powerful men in the city, and soon that truth would change everything. The restaurant had gone completely quiet after the terrible scene. Everyone was still in shock. Vanessa sat frozen at the table, realizing too late that her cruel act had turned the whole room against her. Daniel stood beside her, furious and ashamed. He couldn't believe what she had done in front of his business guests. The manager was whispering instructions to the staff, trying to calm people down and fix the awkward atmosphere, but nothing felt normal anymore. Something heavy hung in the air. Guilt, tension, and disbelief. In the back of the restaurant, Sophia was sitting quietly, holding her torn dress together with trembling hands. She wasn't angry, but she felt deeply hurt, not just because of the humiliation, but because she didn't understand why some people found joy in hurting others. She kept telling herself to stay strong. It's okay. It's just a dress, she whispered softly. I didn't lose my dignity. She lost her peace. Her friend Lily brought her a shawl to cover herself and said gently, you should. Go home, Sophia. You don't have to face them again tonight. But Sophia shook her head. No, I'll finish my shift, she said. I won't let her cruelty change who I am. Just then, the restaurant doors opened again, and a tall man in a black suit walked in. The staff turned their heads immediately because he looked important. His presence was calm yet powerful. He carried himself with quiet confidence. In his hand, he held a bouquet of white lilies. Sophia's favorite flowers. It was Ethan Reynolds, Sophia's husband, though almost no one recognized him. He wasn't the type of billionaire who appeared in flashy magazines or parties. He preferred to live quietly, wearing simple clothes and keeping his identity private. The manager, Mr. Clark, recognized him right away and quickly approached. Mr. Reynolds, welcome, he said, bowing slightly. Ethan smiled politely. Good evening, Mr. Clark. Is Sophia around? I came to surprise her. His voice was calm and warm, the kind that made people feel comfortable, but Mr. Clark's face turned pale. He didn't know how to explain what had just happened. Ah, sir. There's been a little incident, he said nervously. Ethan frowned slightly. Incident? What kind? He asked, his tone still calm but sharper now. Before Mr. Clark could answer, Ethan saw Sophia walking out from the back, her dress torn. Her eyes red but her head held high. The flowers slipped slightly from his hand as he rushed toward her. Sophia, he said, his voice full of worry. What happened to you? She looked up, surprised to see him. Her lips trembled a little. Ethan, you're here? She whispered. He gently placed the flowers on the counter and took off his coat, wrapping it around her shoulders. Who did this? He asked quietly, but there was something powerful in his calm tone. Something that made everyone nearby freeze. Sophia shook her head softly. Please, Ethan, not here? She said. I don't want to make a scene. But Ethan's eyes were full of fire. A scene has already been made, he replied. And it was made at your expense. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the room like thunder. Everyone turned to look at him, including Daniel and Vanessa, who didn't yet realize who he was. Daniel frowned, recognizing Ethan's face from somewhere but not immediately placing it. Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding, he began nervously. Vanessa crossed her arms and rolled her eyes. Oh please, who is this? Her boyfriend? She said mockingly, trying to sound brave. But her voice shook slightly. Ethan turned to her slowly, his eyes calm but cold. I'm her husband, he said simply. Vanessa's mouth fell open. She blinked in confusion. Her husband? She repeated. Wait, you're married to her? Before she could say anything else, the manager spoke up. Miss Vanessa, perhaps you don't realize. This is Mr. Ethan Reynolds. The name hit Daniel like a slap. He froze. Ethan Reynolds? As in Reynolds Industries? He asked in disbelief. Ethan nodded slightly. Yes, that one? He said. Daniel's face turned pale. He immediately stood up. Oh my God, Mr. Reynolds. I didn't know. Please, this is not what it looks like, he stammered. Vanessa's arrogance disappeared instantly. Her face drained of all color as she realized she had just torn the dress of a billionaire's wife. Ethan didn't shout. He didn't insult anyone. His silence was louder than any words. He looked straight at Vanessa and said in a low voice, You tore my wife's dress in front of everyone. You insulted her. And yet, she forgave you. Do you understand how small that makes you? Vanessa opened her mouth but no words came out. She was trembling now. The confidence and pride that had filled her moments ago were completely gone. Daniel tried to apologize again. Mr. Reynolds, I am so sorry. Please, it was a misunderstanding. Vanessa had too much to drink. Ethan turned to him and said coldly, A person's true nature appears when they think no one important is watching. Sophia gently touched Ethan's arm. Please, Ethan, let's go home, she whispered, not wanting to cause more attention, but he shook his head slightly. No, people need to learn that kindness is not weakness, he said, then turned back to Vanessa and Daniel. You saw her as a waitress, so you thought you could humiliate her, but the truth is, the only thing you revealed tonight was your own character. His words cut deeper than anger ever could. The guests in the restaurant began whispering to each other. Some even started clapping softly in support of Sophia. One older woman said out loud, Good for her. She handled it with more grace than most of us would. Vanessa covered her face. Humiliated, Daniel grabbed her arm and said in a low voice, Let's go, Vanessa. We've done enough damage. But she couldn't move. She was frozen in shame. Sophia looked around and smiled weakly at the people who were kind enough to stand by her. Then she turned to her co-workers and thanked them for their concern. Ethan placed his arm around her protectively, guiding her toward the door before leaving. He looked back one last time and said softly, Respect should never depend on money or status. It's the simplest form of humanity, yet so many forget it. His voice echoed through the silent restaurant. As the door closed behind them, Vanessa sank into her chair, feeling the weight of what she had done. Daniel sat beside her, rubbing his forehead. You just humiliated the wife of one of the richest men in the country, he said bitterly. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. But it was too late for apologies. The damage had already been done. Outside, Sophia looked up at Ethan with watery eyes. I didn't want you to find out like this, she said quietly. Ethan smiled gently and wiped her tears. It doesn't matter, my love, he said softly. What matters is you handled it with grace. You didn't let her ugliness change your heart. Sophia leaned against his shoulder as they walked toward the car, the cool night breeze brushing past them. She felt safe again, not because her husband was powerful, but because he understood her, and because she had chosen kindness, even in the face of cruelty. That night, the city lights shimmered across the tall buildings as Ethan's car drove quietly through the streets. Sophia sat beside him, staring out the window, her fingers lightly touching the fabric of his coat that still covered her shoulders. Her heart was calm now, but a part of her still felt the sting of humiliation. Ethan glanced at her from time to time, his expression full of silent concern. He wanted to make her smile again, but he also knew she needed time to heal from what happened. They arrived home. A beautiful but simple house on the edge of the city, far away from the noise and glamour people expected from a billionaire. Ethan had always preferred peace over luxury, and Sophia loved that about him. She never married him for his money. In fact, when they first met, she didn't even know he was rich. He was just a kind man who loved helping people. That's what made her fall for him. As they entered the house, Ethan turned to her and said softly, "Go change into something comfortable. I'll make you tea." Sophia smiled faintly. "You don't have to." But he interrupted her. "I want to." His voice was gentle but firm. Sophia nodded and went to her room. She stood in front of the mirror, looking at her reflection. The torn dress, the tired eyes, the faint red mark where Vanessa had grabbed her. She touched her cheek and took a deep breath. "You're okay," she whispered to herself. "You stayed strong." A few minutes later, she walked into the living room wearing her soft night robe. The smell of chamomile tea filled the air. Ethan was waiting on the couch with 2 cups. "Feeling better?" he asked. Sophia sat beside him and nodded slightly. "A little," she said. "But Ethan, I just don't understand how someone can be so cruel for no reason." Ethan sighed. "People like her think kindness is weakness. They feel powerful when they make others feel small," he said. But tonight, she learned something important, that not everyone they look down on is beneath them. Sophia smiled sadly. "I didn't even want to embarrass her," she said. "I just wanted to walk away." Ethan looked at her lovingly. "And that's why you're the stronger one," he replied. "Your dignity is what makes you special." Suddenly, Ethan's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it and frowned slightly. "It's Daniel," he said, showing her the screen. Sophia looked confused. "The CEO?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, he's calling me." Ethan answered the call, his voice calm but firm. "Daniel," he said, "I didn't expect to hear from you so soon." Daniel sounded nervous, his voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Reynolds, please. I wanted to apologize personally. What happened tonight was completely unacceptable, Vanessa. She went too far, and I take full responsibility." Ethan leaned back. "Apologies are easy," he said, "but respect is harder to learn." Daniel was silent for a moment before saying, "You're right, sir. I've already removed her from any involvement with my company, and I'll personally issue a public apology to your wife if you allow it." Sophia looked at Ethan and shook her head gently, whispering, "I don't want a scene." Ethan nodded slightly, then said into the phone, "No need for that, Daniel. I'm not asking for revenge or public shame. Just make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else who works under you." Daniel agreed immediately. "Absolutely, sir. It won't happen again." Ethan ended the call, setting the phone down. Sophia took a sip of her tea and asked softly, "Do you think she'll ever realize what she did was wrong?" Ethan looked thoughtful for a moment, then said, "Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but guilt has a way of finding people eventually. When pride fades, reflection begins." Sophia nodded slowly, her eyes filled with quiet sadness. Later that night, as Sophia went to bed, she lay awake thinking about the restaurant, the stares, the whispers, and the cold rip of her dress. It replayed in her mind like a movie. But then she remembered how Ethan came for her, how he wrapped his coat around her, how he defended her with calm strength, and that thought brought her peace. She closed her eyes and finally drifted to sleep. Meanwhile, across the city, Vanessa sat alone in her luxury apartment, her makeup smudged, her eyes red from crying. She had never felt so humiliated. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, the same mirror she used to admire herself in every morning. Now it showed her something different. Guilt, regret, and fear. Daniel had left after a big argument. Slamming the door behind him, she picked up her phone and scrolled through the photos people had secretly taken at the restaurant. The comments online were brutal. People were calling her names, accusing her of being heartless and arrogant. She covered her face and sobbed. "What have I done?" she whispered. She realized now that her jealousy and pride had destroyed her image, but worse, it had hurt an innocent person. She wanted to apologize, but she didn't know how. The next morning, Sophia woke up to sunlight streaming through the curtains. The smell of breakfast filled the air. She walked into the kitchen to find Ethan making pancakes. "Good morning," he said cheerfully. "I thought you could use a sweet start today." Sophia laughed softly. "You're too good to me," she said. "I don't deserve all this." Ethan smiled. "You deserve more," he replied. Later that day, Sophia got a call from the restaurant manager. "Mr. Clark, Sophia," he said warmly. "The owner wanted to thank you for how gracefully you handled everything last night, and we'd like to offer you a position as floor supervisor." Sophia was surprised. "Me? Supervisor?" she said in disbelief. "Yes," he replied. "You've shown real strength and class under pressure. Qualities we want in our leadership." She smiled, feeling tears of joy in her eyes. That evening, Sophia and Ethan sat on their porch, watching the sunset. "You know," she said softly, "maybe what happened wasn't such a bad thing after all." Ethan looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" She smiled. "Because sometimes pain teaches people, and maybe it even opens new doors." Ethan nodded, wrapping his arm around her. "You're right," he said. "You turned humiliation into grace, and that's something only the truly strong can do." Sophia rested her head on his shoulder as the sky turned orange and gold. The world around them felt peaceful again. She had faced cruelty and shame, but she came out stronger, not because of wealth or revenge, but because she chose kindness when others chose hate, and that made her richer than any billionaire could ever be. Days passed after the shocking restaurant incident, but the story had already spread like wildfire across social media. People were talking about the waitress who stood up to a cruel woman. Though no one really knew her name, Sophia's picture had been taken by a few customers who admired how calmly she handled the humiliation. Some called her the graceful waitress. Others wrote that she was a symbol of quiet strength, while Vanessa, the woman who had torn her dress, was now the target of online outrage. Her reputation had fallen apart almost overnight. Vanessa had lost most of her followers, her business collaborations were being cancelled, and Daniel, the CEO, had stopped speaking to her. She sat in her penthouse apartment surrounded by luxury, but for the first time in her life, she felt poor. Not in money, but in spirit. Guilt consumed her every minute. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and kept replaying that night in her head, the sound of the fabric ripping, the shocked gasps of the crowd, and the calm eyes of the woman she'd humiliated. She opened her phone and searched the restaurant's page, hoping to find some way to reach Sophia. Her fingers trembled as she typed a message to the manager. "Please, can you give me her contact? I need to apologize." But she got no reply. The world she had built on pride and glamour was crumbling. And for once, she realized how meaningless it all was without respect. Meanwhile, Sophia was back at work, but this time, she wasn't just a waitress. She had been promoted to a supervisor. She wore a neat new uniform and carried herself with quiet confidence. The staff admired her even more now. They saw how she remained humble, still helping them with orders, cleaning tables when needed, and greeting every customer with a warm smile. Her kindness had earned her not just a better position, but also genuine love from those around her. One afternoon, as Sophia was checking a reservation list, the restaurant door opened quietly. She looked up and froze. Standing there was Vanessa, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying, and her expensive outfit replaced by a simple white dress. She looked nothing like the proud woman from that night. The entire staff stopped what they were doing, whispering softly, but Sophia lifted her hand and signaled them to stay calm. Vanessa walked slowly toward her, holding a small paper bag. She stopped a few feet away and took a deep breath. "Sophia," she said softly, her voice shaking. "I don't know if you'll even want to hear me out, but I needed to come here." Sophia stood silently, waiting, Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "I've been wrong all my life," she said. "I thought money made me better. I thought being cruel made me strong, but you showed me how small I really was." She looked down and continued. "That night, I tore your dress because I was jealous. Jealous of your kindness, your calm, your grace, and I hated seeing someone so peaceful when I was full of emptiness. Sophia's eyes softened. She didn't speak yet. She wanted Vanessa to let it all out. Vanessa opened the paper bag and pulled out a new dress, folded neatly. "This is for you?" she said, her hands trembling. "It's not to erase what I did, but I wanted to replace what I ruined." Her voice broke as she whispered, "I'm so sorry, Sophia." Tears ran down her face as she said, "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I regret everything." For a moment, there was silence. Everyone in the restaurant was watching quietly, even Ethan, who had arrived a few minutes earlier and was standing by the entrance. Sophia took a deep breath and slowly walked toward Vanessa. She looked into her eyes, not with anger, but with understanding. "Vanessa?" she said softly. "What you did hurt me, but I decided long ago that I won't let someone else's cruelty live inside me. I forgive you." Vanessa's lips trembled. "You forgive me?" she whispered, unable to believe it. Sophia nodded. "Yes, because forgiveness frees both of us," she said. "You can't change the past, but you can start again." Vanessa covered her face with her hands, crying harder now. She hadn't expected mercy, and it broke her even more than hate ever could. Sophia gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's never too late to become kind," she said. "Just don't forget this feeling. Let it guide you." Ethan watched the scene from a distance, his eyes filled with pride. He knew his wife's heart was bigger than any wound. Vanessa slowly calmed down. She looked at Sophia with a faint smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll never forget this." Then she turned to leave, but before walking out, she glanced at Ethan and said, "You're a lucky man, Mr. Reynolds. She's the kind of woman the world doesn't deserve." Ethan smiled softly. "I know," he said simply. When Vanessa left, the restaurant was silent for a few seconds. Then the staff and customers began to clap quietly. Sophia felt her eyes water. She wasn't proud of what had happened, but she was proud of how she handled it. She turned to her team and said, "Let's get back to work." Smiling through her tears, life moved on, but something in her heart felt lighter. That evening, as Sophia and Ethan walked home, she said softly, "Do you think she'll really change?" Ethan smiled. "You planted the seed," he replied. "And sometimes, that's all it takes." Sophia looked up at the stars, feeling peaceful. "Maybe everything happens for a reason," she said. "Maybe I was meant to meet her, to remind her what kindness looks like." Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "And maybe she was meant to remind you how strong you are," he said. Sophia smiled at that, realizing he was right. She had gone from being humiliated in public to being respected by everyone, not because of wealth or power, but because she chose compassion over revenge. As they reached home, Ethan turned to her and said, "You know, I've met hundreds of people in boardrooms and conferences, but none of them had the kind of strength you showed." Sophia laughed softly. "That's because they never had to deal with a ripped dress," she joked, and they both burst into laughter. The night was calm, the world peaceful, and in that moment, Sophia knew she had won. Not against Vanessa, but against bitterness itself. She had proven that true strength wasn't about fighting back. It was about forgiving, and that sometimes, the greatest victory comes from choosing love in a world that forgets how to show it. A few months passed after the night when Vanessa came to apologize. Life had slowly returned to normal for Sophia, but in truth, it wasn't the same as before. It was better. She had grown stronger, more confident, and more peaceful within herself. She no longer felt like just a waitress. She now carried herself like a woman who had faced humiliation and turned it into grace. Ethan often told her, "What happened was painful, but it showed the world who you really are." And he was right. Her story had quietly inspired many people, though she never sought fame. At the restaurant, Sophia had become a beloved figure. Both customers and staff admired her. She treated everyone equally. From the dishwasher to the manager, she made sure every worker felt valued. Sometimes, new customers would recognize her and whisper softly, "That's her, the woman from the story." She would simply smile and continue working, pretending not to hear, because to her, being known for kindness was better than being known for wealth. One bright morning, Ethan was reading the newspaper when he noticed an article that made him stop. He looked at Sophia and smiled. "You might want to see this," he said, passing the paper to her. The headline read, "Former CEO's girlfriend opens charity for working women. Says, a waitress changed my life." Sophia's eyes widened as she began to read. It was about Vanessa. She had left her old life of vanity and started a foundation to help women who faced disrespect or hardship in their workplaces. In the article, Vanessa wrote, "I once humiliated a woman who was better than me in every way. Her forgiveness taught me that kindness is power. I want to spend my life giving that kindness back." Sophia smiled softly, her eyes filling with tears. She whispered, "She really changed." Ethan put his arm around her and said, "Because you planted the seed?" Sophia looked at him and nodded. "Maybe this is what it was all for?" she said. Later that week, Vanessa herself visited the restaurant again, but this time it wasn't to apologize. It was to thank Sophia. She came quietly, wearing a simple blue dress, and handed her a small envelope. "Sophia," she said, smiling gently, "I wanted to invite you to the opening of my foundation's first women's shelter, and I'd be honored if you could come." Sophia looked surprised. "Me?" she asked. Vanessa nodded. "Yes, it all began with you. It's only right that you're there when we start." Sophia accepted the invitation with a warm smile. The evening of the event arrived, and Sophia wore a simple, elegant gown that Ethan had gifted her. They arrived hand in hand at the charity venue. The room was decorated beautifully, filled with guests, reporters, and women from all walks of life. Vanessa stood on stage, looking composed but humble. When she saw Sophia, she smiled warmly and motioned for her to come closer. When it was time for speeches, Vanessa took the microphone and began speaking softly. "A few months ago," she said, "I did something terrible. I humiliated a kind woman because of my own insecurities, but instead of hatred, she gave me forgiveness. That forgiveness changed me more than any punishment could have." She turned to Sophia and said, "Sophia, this foundation exists because you showed me what real strength looks like, the strength to forgive, to rise above, and to stay kind even when life is unfair." The audience turned their eyes to Sophia, some already tearing up. Vanessa continued, "This place will be a safe home for women who are struggling. Waitresses, cleaners, single mothers, anyone who's ever felt invisible, because no one deserves to be treated as less." The audience clapped loudly, and Sophia felt her heart swell with pride, not for herself, but for the change that had come from such pain. After the event, Vanessa approached Sophia and hugged her. "Thank you for giving me a second chance," she said softly. "I'll spend my life making it count." Sophia smiled and whispered back, "That's all the forgiveness ever needed, to become something good." Ethan stood nearby, watching them with admiration. He knew this moment would stay in his wife's heart forever. As the months turned into a year, Sophia's life continued to blossom. She still worked at the restaurant, but now she also volunteered at Vanessa's foundation, mentoring young women who needed encouragement. She told them, "Don't ever think your kindness is your weakness, it's your greatest strength." Her words inspired many. Women who had once felt small now stood tall because of her guidance. Ethan often came to pick her up after her sessions, standing quietly by the door, watching her talk to others with so much love and patience. One day he told her, "You've done more good than you realize, Sophia. You've changed people's hearts." She smiled at him and said, "Maybe that's what life is about. Not being perfect, but helping others see their own light." One sunny afternoon, Sophia sat on a park bench with Ethan, watching children play nearby. She looked thoughtful and said, "It's strange, isn't it? How one cruel moment turned into something beautiful." Ethan nodded. "Sometimes life breaks you to rebuild you stronger," he said. "And you, my love, became unbreakable." Sophia laughed softly, resting her head on his shoulder. "Not unbreakable," she said, "just wiser." As the sun began to set, she closed her eyes, listening to the laughter around her, the sound of life moving forward. She realized that the pain she once felt no longer had power over her. She had forgiven, healed, and grown, and through that, she had touched more lives than she ever imagined. Meanwhile, Vanessa continued her work tirelessly. Her foundation grew, and she often mentioned Sophia's name in interviews, calling her the woman who taught me what grace truly means. She even created a scholarship program in Sophia's name to help young women finish their studies while working. When Sophia heard about it, she was deeply moved. Tears of gratitude filled her eyes. One evening, as Sophia and Ethan sat together on their porch, he asked quietly, "Do you ever wish that night never happened?" She thought for a moment and said, "No, because if it hadn't, none of this good would have come. Maybe that's what forgiveness does. It turns pain into purpose." Ethan smiled and took her hand. "And that's why I love you," he said. She looked at him and whispered, "And that's why I survived it." As the sky turned golden and the first stars began to shine, Sophia smiled peacefully. She had gone from a humble waitress to a symbol of grace, from humiliation to honor, and she did it not with anger or wealth, but with kindness. Her story became a quiet reminder to everyone that no act of cruelty can ever defeat a heart that chooses compassion, and that sometimes the greatest power in the world is simply the power to forgive.